We've been following the story of Joseph Peaty from Olseley. Now, Joseph is a haemophiliac who was treated with contaminated blood when he was just 16 years old. In October, the government held a debate to address the issue, something that Joseph and over 100 other campaigners had waited for over 25 years to happen. 25 years. At that time, Joseph felt that the government was quite negative towards their cause. You can't imagine it, can you, that you've got a condition, you go to get some help, you get treatment, and that treatment actually makes you worse. And in Joseph's case, quite considerably. He had high hopes when MP Anne Milton, the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Health, held an open meeting to discuss the contaminated blood scandal further last week. So what happened? Well, let's ask Joseph. He joins us now. Joseph, good morning.
Good morning, Annie.
Good morning. This is a story that we've taken up on the programme, and I'm banging the drum as loud as I can because I just feel... And I don't know all the ins and outs, but just in principle, I feel an outrage that somebody can have a condition, they get treatment, and as a result of that treatment, they're worse off, which is what exactly happened to you.
Absolutely, and we appreciate the fact that you've taken this up. It needs a voice beyond the campaign itself, and it really does need the public, if we can, to get them on board as well, because the government... It seems incredulous that after all these years, with all the evidence that we've heard and we've seen in a public inquiry, the courts have challenged the government, we've challenged the government, everybody that you speak to in Parliament, we've had great support from MPs, particularly recently, and the Lords. In fact, if you ask the average person on the street and tell them a little bit about it, they feel that this should be addressed fully. The only ones that don't seem to have done this up until now are the government, and they've been entrenched for over 25 years.
You've waited 25 years, and you're after, fundamentally, an apology. Can you just remind us, though, of how being treated with contaminated blood affected you? Just very briefly, Joseph, because some people may not have heard the story.
Yeah, I mean, for myself, the contaminated blood led to multiple illnesses, sometimes kind of almost unexplainable, just fevers and illness, great fatigue to the point where you really don't feel like you're even going to make it through the day. And in my case, the viruses attacked my joints and they left me wheelchair-bound in an electric wheelchair, unable to work, and in fact reliant on community care.
And many of those, like yourself, contracted hepatitis C and HIV.
Yeah, this is right. We contracted HIV and various hepatitis viruses, but whilst we were told there was no real danger from them in the early days, we now know that hepatitis C is actually killing people. In fact, there was some evidence that would be the case even in the early days, although it was denied.
And this is because the blood that was originally used had come from pretty unreliable sources. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, they were taken from paid donors because we imported a lot of our blood from America, and their policy was to pay people to give blood, so they included prison inmates and drug users and prostitutes and people that were really
unbelievable,
quite vulnerable themselves.
Unbelievable. In that time, I mean, there were thousands. We're not just talking of a handful of people. There were thousands of people who were haemophiliacs who had that same treatment. They, too, were infected. In some cases, you know, some of the men didn't even know that they had HIV and were continuing to have, you know, a healthy relationship with their partner.
Absolutely. And, I mean, unbeknownst to them, their partners became infected too, and the disaster just spread and snowballed out of control.
Unbelievable. But so far, no apology. So I know when we last spoke, you were going down to speak and hear the debate in Parliament, and I know Geoffrey Robinson MP has been a part of this. You had high hopes when MP Anne Milton, who's the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Health, held an open meeting to discuss the contaminated blood scandal. So what happened in that meeting?
Well, yeah, I mean, the meeting came as a little bit of a surprise to us after the negativity surrounding the debate. But when we met her, initially, I've got to say, we felt quite positive about this.
So there's a certain frisson of excitement of, at last, somebody is listening.
Yeah, definitely. And Anne Milton, as I understand, has got a bit of a background anyway in nursing, so she did come across as quite sympathetic to our needs. She seemed to understand us. But there was, as you can imagine, there's a lot of high-running feelings and there was a lot of frustration that we only got to speak to her very briefly, and in fact put basically one question to her each. And at the end of it, whilst she was sounding sympathetic, there was still really nothing firm that she was saying she was going to do. And you can understand the scepticism of our community. We've been here so many times where governments have brushed our needs aside. And
so do you feel on this occasion then that yet again you've been perhaps fobbed off?
I think the sceptics amongst us at the moment have got very mixed feelings as to whether this was actually a meeting to find out our needs and to actually address those needs that would benefit the majority of us and certainly the worst affected, or whether in fact it's just another government exercise to strengthen their position, to say that they've basically consulted with us so that the courts will look more favourably on them. And then what we will see in towards Christmas is a report with a very watered down attempt to address our needs and basically deal with some things like prescription charges and maybe some counselling and things like this. Maybe a little bit more help for hepatitis C, but basically avoiding the whole issue of the compensation and the apology.
So you feel in many ways you're back to square one. So you're wanting the government to apologise. To how many people now are we talking? A handful? Thousands?
Now we've got, originally there were some 4,670 people that were infected.
Yes.
And of those, we've got around about 2,000 registered. You're basically looking about half of them have died. And
you see, I was putting my somewhat cynical head on, Joseph. I suppose if they've prevaricated for 25 years, it's not just this government, it's previous governments and administrations as well. But if you prevaricate and flap about long enough, to put it bluntly, you'll all be gone anyway, and your problem solved.
Yeah, I mean, this is if you look around the world at disasters such as the tsunamis that we've seen and earthquakes and so on, if they hadn't responded to those immediately, there would have been nobody left to save by the time they got there. If they based it on the economy and the fact that I'm very sorry, we're in an economic downturn, we can't help you, but we'll send somebody when things improve, there would have been nobody to save. And this is the same for our community. They've waited and waited, and slowly the numbers are dwindling. And if they eventually do get round to doing something, then there's either going to be so few of us left to save and help our lives, or there will be nobody. And
so just briefly, Joseph, because I'm running out of time, but I really do need to get a grip now. What happens now? Where does your campaign go?
Okay, our campaign at the moment, obviously we're going to reserve an element of judgment to see what Anne Milton actually comes up with.
Yes. But the jury's out on that one.
I have my doubts.
Okay.
I'll give her the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, let's give the benefit of the doubt and see what happens.
But what we need at the moment is the public really to get behind us. If they've been touched by this issue, if they feel that we actually should have this resolved, then please write to number 10, write to David Cameron, and tell him that you think that our needs should be addressed. If you like, irrespective of this current economic situation, because there's never going to be a right time for them to deal with it. And if we don't get the public behind us, it seems that they're not listening to us alone. And if the public wants more information on this campaign, they can always, if they're online, look at the taintedblood.info website, and there's a lot of information on there about the catastrophe.
All right. Joseph, we will talk again. We will continue to keep on the case on this. And if you're listening to this and you feel the same kind of outrage that I feel, that, here is Joseph who, through no fault of his own, has a medical condition. You get the treatment, and as a result of the treatment, you end up with hepatitis C, HIV, as has happened to so many haemophiliacs. And so far, no apology at all, let alone compensation. Then obviously heed Joseph's advice. Joseph, thanks very much indeed. We will talk again.
Thank you very much, Annie. And just to reiterate, the people that need this help, it's all based on their need. It's not based on greed and we just want lots of money. There are genuine issues out there that people need addressing, and the only way to do that is through financial support. support, either a capital payment or regular payments.
All right, Joseph Peaty from Olseley in Coventry, thanks very much indeed. And we'll be continuing to follow Joseph's story and, of course, his friends and colleagues as well, who suffered in the same way.